In the midst of the chaos, Carrington found solace in the one person who had always been there for her, Jake, her best friend of 10 years. Carrington met Jake at a designing job she once held prior to her business taking off and becoming the successful interior designer that she is today. Jake worked in the mailroom and flirted with Carrington almost daily. Carrington explained to Jake one day over lunch that they would and could only be friends. Carrington was, by the way, happily married, but she also was 10 years older than Jake and was more of a sister figure to him than anything else. David called Jake the work husband, but everyone knew how close their relationship was and what it meant for them to be friends. No one ever questioned their friendship because they knew and could see with their own eyes that it was nothing more than a true platonic friendship. And over the years, their friendship had grown stronger and stronger. Jake had always been single. He enjoyed being that way. He never wanted to be in a committed relationship with anyone. However, he had various ladies come in and out of his life constantly. At one point a couple of years back, when Carrington confided in Jake about her crumbling life, she found herself seeing Jake in a different light. He was now 35, and he had matured in a way that she never expected. Jake listened, understood, and cared for Carrington in a way that almost made her fall. But Carrington immediately shook that feeling off. One day, while Carrington was over at Jake's house and talking about her usual problems, she began to cry, and Jake leaned in to comfort her. And what began as a comforting embrace turned into a passionate kiss that left both of them reeling with guilt and confusion. Present day. The next morning, after Carrington and David left for work, Carrington took a detour to Jake's loft. As she walked in, the familiar scent of coffee and paint lingered in the air. It was her safe space, her retreat from the storm that her life had become. She stared out the window, her mind swirling with thoughts of David's growing distance and Marcus's intoxicating presence. Yet it was Jake who had been her constant and quiet refuge in the noise. Jake sat across from her, his hands working on a charcoal sketch, but his eyes flicked up to her every few moments. He could sense something was off with her, more than usual. "You're quiet, Carrie," Jake said softly, his voice steady, inviting. "What's going on?" Carrington sighed, rubbing her temples. "Everything feels like it's falling apart, Jake. I don't even know where to start." Jake set his sketch aside, leaning forward with concern. "Is it David again? Or Marcus?" She winced at the mention of Marcus's name, feeling the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "Both," she admitted. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore. With David, it's like we're strangers now, and with Marcus, he's everything I shouldn't want, but I do." Jake's expression softened as he reached out, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to explain it all to me, Carrie. You know I'm here, right? I always have been and always will be." Her chest tightened at his words. Jake was the one person who had never judged her, never asked for more than she could give. He was everything. So thoughtful, patient, and very much present. Carrington's voice was barely above a whisper. "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is," Jake said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "Maybe you're complicating something that doesn't need to be." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw the warmth in his eyes. A warmth that had always been there, but never like this. Something shifted between them, a magnetic pull that neither of them could ignore. "Jake," she started, but words failed her. Before she could think twice, she leaned into him, her lips brushing against his softly, tentatively. Jake didn't pull away. Instead, he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her closer. Their emotions unraveled as they gave in to the moment, their bodies swaying back and forth. "Carrie," Jake murmured against her lips, his voice strained. "We shouldn't—" "I know," she breathed, but she didn't stop. Jake lifted her skirt and pulled her panties to the side as he slowly eased himself inside. They were crossing a line that had always been there but had never been acknowledged. Their bodies moved together, not out of lust but out of a deeper connection, a need for comfort, for understanding, for something neither of them had been able to find elsewhere. When it was over, the weight of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. They lay side by side, both lost in their own thoughts. Jake turned to her, his voice thick with emotion. "Carrie, I just started seeing someone and her name is Brandy." Carrington laid there staring at the ceiling. "Jake, why are you telling me this now?" "Because," he said, "I don't know what this means. What are you and I doing? Why now?" Carrington's heart was pounding in her chest. "I don't know what this means. I didn't plan for this, and I don't care anything about your new friend Brandy. They never stay longer than a week." Carrington got up off the bed and put her clothes on. "We can pretend it never happened, if that's what you want," she said. Jake sat up and stared at her as he rebutted. "But it did. It happened, and I don't want you to run from this or how you feel." "What about Brandy?" she asked. "Obviously you're mentioning her for a reason. So what is it, Jake? Why now? Right after we just had sex? Because Carrie, I really like her, and I didn't see this coming with you either. But it's what I've wanted with you since the first day I laid eyes on you. I wanted to know what you felt like. You've been so intoxicating to me all these years. If this was just a one-night stand for you, then let me know. I mean, Brandy is cool, but she's not you. And if this means we could potentially become more, then I would let her go." Carrington looked at Jake with tears in her eyes. "Jake, this just happened. I can't leave David just because we fucked once." "Jake, listen," she said softly. "You have been my anchor for so long, but right now I'm confused. What we just did is going to change everything. I don't want to come between anything you have going on with Brandy. If you feel something for her, then see where it goes. I genuinely love you and want the best for you." "Same," he said. "I love you too." They sat there in silence. As Carrington dressed quietly, pulling herself back into reality, she could sense the shift between her and Jake. The weight of the moment hung heavy, but before either of them could say more, she knew she needed to leave. It had all gone too far. "I should go," Carrington said, looking down as she slipped on her shoes. Jake, with concern in his voice, asked, "Are you sure you're okay?" "We will talk later, Jake," she said as she turned to walk out of his bedroom. "I just need to think." Just as she was about to open the front door, a dark figure appeared on the other side. "Marcus! Leaving already?" His voice was low, cold, and laced with menace. Carrington gasped and took a step back, her heart hammering in her chest. "Marcus! What are you doing here?" Marcus stepped inside the loft, his eyes darting between Carrington and Jake, narrowing as the pieces fell into place. His jaw clenched as he glared at Jake, then back at Carrington. He had followed her, suspicion eating at him the moment she'd left her home hours ago. "You really thought I wouldn't figure it out?" Marcus growled, his hand reaching behind his back. "Marcus, listen." Carrington started, but her words were cut off when he pulled out a gun, leveling it at both her and Jake. Jake froze, his face turning pale. "Hey, man, take it easy. We don't need to do this." "I'm not your man," Marcus spat, his voice dripping with venom. "I see what's going on. I should have known. All this time playing me like a fool. Is this how you want things to end, Carrie? With him?" He pointed the gun in Jake's direction. Carrington raised her hands, her voice shaking. "Marcus, please don't do this. I didn't. This isn't what you think it is. Just put the gun down." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Not what I think? I've seen the way you both look at each other. You think I'm stupid? You're screwing him now too, huh?" Jake stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden moves. "Marcus, listen. This has nothing to do with you. You need to walk away before things get worse. We can all just talk this out." "Shut up!" Marcus snapped, his hand shaking slightly, the barrel of the gun shifting between the two of them. "You don't get to tell me anything. I should have put an end to this a long time ago." Carrington's breath caught. tears welling in her eyes. "Marcus, please, think about this. This isn't who you are." "You don't know me," Marcus snarled, taking a step toward her. "You never did. Marcus!" Jake's voice was firm now, his hands in front of him as he took a step forward. "I've already called the police. They're on their way." Marcus's eyes darted to Jake in disbelief. "What?" Jake pointed toward his phone lying on the table, the screen showing a call in progress. "They're coming, so you can leave now, or you can wait here and explain to them why you brought a gun into my house." For a long, tense moment, Marcus didn't move. His jaw clenched, and his grip on the gun tightened. Then, as the distant sound of sirens began to echo through the city streets, something shifted in his expression. Fear crept in. Marcus lowered the gun, his eyes still burning with rage. "This isn't over," he muttered. "You're gonna regret this, Carrie, both of you." Without another word, he turned and stormed out of the loft, the door slamming behind him. The tension in the room lingered long after he was gone, the echo of his threats hanging in the air. Carrington collapsed onto the couch, her body trembling with a mix of fear and relief. Jake rushed over to her, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Are you okay?" he whispered, brushing her hair back from her face. She nodded, though her heart still raced. "I didn't think he'd go that far. I didn't see this coming." Jake held her closer, his voice steady. "It's over now. He's gone." But Carrington couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus wasn't done. His words echoed in her mind, a dark promise of what was still to come. Thank you for tuning in for another episode. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe so you won't miss any new videos. See you soon, my Love Tribe smooches.